For this learning objective, we will compute the degree of operating leverage at a particular level of sales and explain how it can be used to predict changes in net operating income. Operating leverage is a measure of how sensitive net operating income is to percentage changes in sales. It's a measure at any given level of sales of how a percentage change in sales volume will affect a company's profits. Specifically, it's calculated by dividing our contribution margin by our net operating income. Companies such as airlines, automobile manufacturers, or utilities that have a high proportion of their cost are fixed costs and variable costs per unit are fairly low, are said to have a high degree of operating leverage because every dollar in sales results in a proportionally large increase in the contribution margin to cover the high level of fixed costs. This is one of the reasons we always find airlines discounting prices because the variable cost associated with flying one more passenger across the country is very low, and most all of that ticket revenue then will flow to the contribution margin and help cover their fixed cost. The same thing is true with automobile companies that have a very large fixed cost associated with each model of car in terms of research and development cost, in terms of plant and manufacturing cost, and so they need a high level of sales to generate sufficient contribution margin to cover their fixed cost. Again, these companies are said to have a high level of operating leverage. Let's look at the operating leverage for the Racing Bicycle Corporation. At its current level of sales of 500 bikes, it has a contribution margin of $100,000. If we divide this by its 20,000 net operating income, we have a degree of operating leverage of 5. Let's go ahead and take a look at what this means. With an operating leverage of 5, if the Racing Bike Corporation increased its sales by 10%, its net operating income would increase by 5 times that much, or 50%. Let's go ahead and verify that this is indeed the case. A 10% increase in sales from $250,000 will raise our sales to $275,000. At this level of sales, our variable cost will be 550 bikes times $300, or $165,000, which means our contribution margin will increase to $110,000. Since our fixed costs remain constant, our net operating income will increase to $30,000. An increase in net operating income from $20,000 to $30,000 is a 50% increase. Let's consider the following contribution margin income statement and compute the company's degree of operating leverage, then use the degree of operating leverage to estimate the impact on net operating income of a 5% increase in sales. Our contribution margin is $48,000, and that's given. Our net operating income is given as $10,000, which means our degree of operating leverage is 4.8. That's the $48,000 contribution margin divided by our $10,000 net operating income. If we multiply our degree of operating leverage of 4.8 by our 5% increase in sales, we can see the company's net operating income would increase by 24%. That's 4.8 times our 5% increase in sales. Let's put together a new income statement to reflect the 5% increase in sales. We were given our variable expense and contribution margin as a percentage of sales, and we're told our sales will increase by 5%. So sales will increase from $80,000 to $84,000. Since our variable expenses are 40% of sales, we take our $84,000 in sales and multiply it by our 40% expense ratio to get variable expenses of $33,600. This gives us a contribution margin of $84,000, which we could have of $50,400, which we could have also calculated if we multiplied the $84,000 in sales by our contribution margin ratio of 60%. Our fixed expenses were given at $38,000 and they don't change. So our net operating income will increase from $10,000 to $12,400, and this is a 24% increase in net operating income.